So adding the left and right walls to our world should be pretty easy. We're going to follow the same process that we did for creating the floor. Now, if you looked at our fairly convoluted way of making a rectangle and thought to yourself, gee, the first thing I'm going to do is make a function that'll create all these vertices for me so I don't have to do this myself. Turns out you don't have to. Box2D already has a function built in that does exactly that for you. I just wanted to show you what Box2D does when you call this setAsBox function. It's not anything magical. It's actually creating just these same four vectors the way we just did above. It just makes the process a little easier. So I'm going to create a new shape definition, tall skinny shape def, which is still a V2 polygon def. And we're going to call Box2D's built-in, or I should say, we're going to call the polygon def's built-in function setAsBox. Now, before I give you the parameters to this function, let's just take a look at the slightly different way in which Box2D defines boxes compared to Flash. So in Flash, if you're defining a rectangle, chances are you're defining it by its upper left corner, and then its width, and then its height. This is probably the way you're used to, and it all kind of makes sense. In Box2D, it's a little different. If you've got your rectangle, you're actually going to define its position based on the center of the rectangle. And then you're going to define sort of this half width and half height. To be honest, I really don't like this way of defining rectangles. I don't find it very easy to plan out. I find it weird given that I'm used to using rectangles the old way in Flash. The only ways I've been able to sort of make it make a little more sense for me internally is, one, kind of think of it almost the same way you're defining a circle. A circle, obviously, you define the center point and you define the radius. That's almost kind of what we're doing here with the rectangles. The other way I kind of reconcile this internally is, if you think that, we're really concerned with a physics type engine, chances are a physics engine is going to be very concerned with the center of mass. And maybe it kind of makes sense that we're defining things by where the center of mass is likely to end up on this rectangle. I don't know if that's really going to help or if you're just going to think it's weird. Personally, I still think it's weird. But let's move on. So we want this box, if it's going to be our left wall, to go from roughly 0, 0 in the upper left to 10, 390 on the bottom right. So if we do a little math, we're going to figure out that the half width of that rectangle, which is 10 pixels wide, is going to be 5. And remember to divide by our ratio. And then the half height is 390 divided by 2 is 195. We can kind of set the same friction as above. And again, we're going to set density to 0 to show that this is a static object. Static in the it's not moving around sense, not the programming static object sense. And now let's create our wall body def. Again, with this, probably all we're going to define is the position of this body. And again, we want the position of this rectangle that goes from 0, 0 to 10, 390. So we're going to take its position and we're going to set it to the center of that is, I guess, 5 and 195. And finally, we're going to create our left wall. It's going to be a V2 body. We're going to have our world create the body using the wall body definition. And then we're going to take our left wall. We're going to use it to create a shape, pass in the tall skinny shape definition. And then once again, we're going to call set mass from shapes, which might not be necessary here, but is a good habit to get into. Now at this point, I'm actually going to reuse my wall body definition. It turns out you can do this. These aren't anything sort of magical that stay with the shape after it's been created. these body definitions are actually just a fancy way of passing a whole bunch of parameters. In this case, actually, I'm only passing one parameter, the position of the body, because everything else I'm kind of going with the default settings. And we'll talk about this a little more later, just to make it clear. But what it does mean is I can take this wall body definition that I've had, and I can take its position, and I can set it to a completely different location. For the wall that takes up the right-hand side of the world, I'm going to set it to 545 and 195, because this rectangle that's going to make up our right wall is going to go from 540 to 550 and from 0 to 390. And so 545, 195 is the center of that rectangle. And now I can do this right wall, B2 body. And now I can create the body reusing that wall body definition. I can have it create a shape using my tall skinny shape def. Again, I can reuse that completely as is because it's defining a box that's exactly the shape and density that I need. And in fact, I didn't need to create this tall skinny shape definition. I could have taken the big long shape definition that was my floor shape definition, reconfigured all the vertices, and reused that. I suppose if I were super concerned with saving memory, I would do that. I find it's probably not worth doing it given the extra confusion it would kind of add using this same shape definition for completely different shapes. However, in this case, because the left wall and the right wall have the exact same shape, it kind of makes sense to reuse this whole shape definition. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to set mask from shapes. And I'm going to move this trace statement down to the bottom. And now hopefully we'll be able to see that our world has 4 bodies in it. Let's run it. And if everything compiles right, there you go. We have 4 bodies. We have the magic ground body that takes up sort of the background. Then you've got the floor and the left and right bodies. Again, not very interesting because we actually haven't told Flash to draw anything, but we'll get to that soon, I promise.